What if Apple made a standalone camera? Their phones have some great cameras, especially for videos. So great in fact that the question, can this iPhone replace a camera, has been asked many times in recent years. What if they simply took the camera module from the phones, alongside everything else it strictly needs to work, and sold it? Well, here's how it could be. When designing something, Apple is mainly obsessed with three things: compactness, simplicity, and integration. These were also the main things I considered while making this concept. For the compactness, well, you can see it for yourself. This is no red Komodo. It would basically be Apple's version of the DJI Action 2. We've all complained about how ridiculously massive the bump is on the back of the iPhone 13 Pro, and it is, for a camera bump. But as a standalone camera, it's actually pretty small. But because of how small it would be, I think it wouldn't make much sense to have a screen. I know, it would definitely be a bit unusual at least, but for how this one is meant to be used, I think it makes sense. Where would you place the screen? On the back? Well, if you're using it to record yourself, it would be completely useless then. On the front alongside the camera module, then it's not that compact anymore. All the use cases in which a screen would be useful are also the ones where it simply makes more sense to just use your phone. It doesn't make sense to compete with that. This camera is meant to do other things. The ideal user for something like this is somebody that doesn't need a spectacular camera, that basically could make do with recording on an iPhone, as that's the quality you'd get, that wants to have an actual setup though, all seamlessly working within the Apple ecosystem. That's the most important part. Basically YouTubers, yeah. For that workflow, you'd mainly just record yourself, which is something you can do with every phone on the planet. But if you want to see yourself in the meantime, you have to use the front-facing camera, which is way worse. In this case, you could just use this camera, for which I need an actual name for the recording, and an iPhone or an iPad as the viewfinder. From now on, I'll be calling it AirCamera. Does it sound stupid? Absolutely, but it follows Apple's usual naming system. A very Apple-esque feature for this AirCamera, I'm already regretting this, could be automatic multicam, in case you have more than one. Imagine you have a setup with multiple cameras recording the same scene at the same time, but from different perspectives. The software could automatically recognize when to swap the viewpoint. But if this entire studio is all perfectly integrated software-wise, what about accessories? By making this camera basically a little cube, by default it doesn't really need a tripod or anything else to be used. Just place it on a flat surface and you're good. But what if you want to mount it on something? I could definitely see Apple making an entire accessory line for something like this. They are selling accessories for a GPS tracker after all. So, one word: magnets. Apple adores magnets. They've been putting them everywhere recently. iPhones have magnets, iPads have magnets, the Apple Watch, AirPods, the new MacBook Pros, and even the iMac now. So of course they would sell you a magnetic tripod that only works there. Surprisingly, one of the advantages of this camera could be the price, because despite being Apple, the company we are talking about, they could definitely be able to sell it for a lower price than DJI or GoPro's offerings. Remember that the main component is shared with the iPhone 13 Pro. They already produce millions of them every year. They definitely have an advantage when it comes to economies of scale. The other advantage, as I explained before, is how well this would integrate within the ecosystem, which is what Apple does best. But is this enough? This would basically be a camera for vloggers and YouTubers using the Apple ecosystem essentially. Would it really sell that well for Apple to be worth producing? Yes. Eventually. This entire video was about how something like this would work with the current status quo of the iPhone being the main type of device everyone uses, but that won't last forever. If you have been following Apple rumors in recent times, you've definitely heard about the Apple Glass, and maybe you've heard of that rumor from John Prosser of them costing $500. That's the part that many believe to be the most unrealistic, but it actually kinda makes sense. Even if they have a camera that even against all odds ends up being at least as good as the iPhone's main rear lens, what about telephoto and ultrawide? What about selfies, video calls, and being able to record yourself in general? That's a problem. That's simply something that smart glasses won't be able to do. But if they want Apple Glass to replace the iPhone and an external camera is required to do something you were able to do on the iPhone by default, it kinda makes sense for them to cost only $500 at the start. Over time, the price of the glasses, plus the camera, which would be a necessity, would become the same as the price of a new iPhone. And yeah, by the way, smart glasses are the future. Check this video out if you want to see why that's the case and how I solved many of the issues of this category of devices. Ciao!